Okay, are we ready?
Can you start before 6?
Good job, Rachel. Thank you. Publicly recognized. Too bad there's nobody here to hear it. Well, Facebook's here. Facebook's
It's being
here.
recorded forever.
Good job.
You must really like us.
You were ready to get started. You got your mic already
No,
on.
mic's already on. Okay, the time is 6 o'clock. Welcome to the special meeting of the Town Council for the Town of Sunnyvale. I'm going to ask Council Member Allen to lead us in invocation first thing before we get started.
Let's stand and pray real quick. Father God, we thank you for this day and this opportunity to meet, to serve the town, to serve the needs of the town, and to represent you. Father, be with us as we make decisions today that we'll have good discussions and you'll speak through us and use us for the betterment of this town. Father, we love you. We thank you for all your blessings. In Christ's name, amen.
Oh, let's go ahead and do the pledge. Let's do it. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Okay. Now I'll call to order special meeting of the Town Council. Today is Monday, August 5th. It is 6 p.m. And we do have a quorum present. We are missing the mayor, Saji, and council member Egan are not present. We do have a quorum. We have no audience, so I will skip over that. We have 2 items on the agenda. What? We do have an audience, Dave. Dave, are you going to speak to us today? I don't need to go over the rules? Okay. Thank you, Dave. All right, so we have 2 items on the agenda. First item is finance, so I will turn it over to Liz and let her speak to us.
I'm trying to give you a page number, but basically it's our PowerPoint. There you go. It's going to be the page 5. And page 5, you've seen this information before. This is just your general fund budget, where we laid out the base revenues and the base expenses, and then we added in the initiatives that we've identified that we would like to get funded. So this you've seen before. Then page 6 is just a tax rate comparison. You'll see this again when we publish. This is just to give you the year before and the current year rates. It's going to be required reporting when we publish our proposed rate. We have 2 rates that are to be determined. That's our M&O and our INS. And going on to the next page. What staff attempted to do with this presentation was to leave the $1,271,436. That's the amount of reserves that you're going to use for new initiatives. So we wanted to preserve that number and see what the tax rate would need to be, or what additional expenses would come about from these 4 options that we have here. The first one is we gave you the current rates with the total tax rate of .4129. Option 1, that takes your certified rolls, and it takes your current, it takes an M&O rate that I presented to you back on, I believe it was July 22nd. That was our projection, and a projected INS rate of .0997. And we had projected that we would come to a total tax rate of .4347, or $76.30 tax increase. Option 2 took the same certified values. We kept the M&O rate the same. We applied the INS rate that we believe will provide our debt service. That was provided with partnership with Hilltop Securities. And that gives you a total tax rate of .4388, or $90.65. Option 3 took what we call a revenue neutral M&O, and that just means that we wouldn't need to use additional reserves for this option. So that M&O rate that would give you revenue neutral would be .349103, and again, your INS rate of .0997. That would give you a total tax rate of .44803, or $125.66 tax increase. And option 4 would be going to the M&O rollback, which is .357041, and again, an INS rate of .0997, and that would bring you to a total rollback rate of .456741, or $153.44, and it would provide additional revenues of $101,247. There are other options that we can run. It really is what your tax tolerance is and what our funding needs are, and trying to bring those two together and get them to handshake. That's all I have, so I'll answer any questions.
All right, council, any questions for Liz? General comments, thoughts on these different rates?
I guess I'll start a discussion. We don't ever like to raise taxes. There's none of us, but we're all taxpayers, so it affects us just as well as it does those that we serve. This is probably the most difficult year because we've got so much out in front of us and so many unknowns. We know that INS is going up this year, and we know why it's going up. That's no secret, and it has to go up. We have no choice. We have to fund the police department and associated actions. I would like to keep it as low as possible, and I think that cutting right to the chase of where I'm at, so you'll know, I think option 3 is doable as much as we don't like to see what it represents. And that gives us a zero bottom line, which I think is important. It's what our challenge is when we look at our charter. It's only $10 a month on the average home. I know that's a burden for some people, perhaps doable for others. So going down and looking at the M&O rate, I guess I reconciled it in my own mind that that's a 2.9% increase in the M&O rate over the current M&O rate. And that I could reconcile and say that's just inflation. Now, I know that inflation is not really 3%. It's a little bit lower. But that's a 2.9, and it's basically inflation. But we're entitled to that. Our employees are entitled to that. They have to be compensated fairly We're a growing town. We have to add personnel. Everybody recognizes that we have street maintenance issues. We've got a blessing this year that perhaps we didn't get the increase that we anticipated for our sheriff's contract, but we're going to bear the burden of running the sheriff's contract and a parallel beginnings of a new police force. So a 2.9% increase just doesn't seem that burdensome with all that we've got to face. And as you know, we perhaps recognized another one of those burdens that we didn't even anticipate today, with a major road having to be closed because of weather damage. And we're going to have to throw some money out for that. So I guess, I'm sorry it was a long-winded exercise, but I guess I'm kind of okay with option 3. I don't want to do more than I have to, but seems like that's the right place to be as the numbers stack up. And it's something I think we can communicate.
I would absolutely agree with almost everything that Councilman Wade said. You know, we're in that interesting time where we actually need the revenue. We know what's coming. If we're willing to go up $10 a month, I would even suggest taking a look at option 4 as well. For the simple fact that we anticipated getting that 8% roll up this year. We anticipated that's what we were going to get, and we anticipated that's what the rolls were going to send us to. We ended up not getting that. However, when you start factoring in a future 3% increase maximum, which actually is going to turn into a tax rate decrease for us over time going forward, I think we strongly have to consider that option, for the simple fact of, if we have the ability to go up to 8 today, and in the future we're going to be capped at 3 going forward, it might make the most sense to actually take a serious look at going up the full 8. And again, you know, if we're talking, you know, monthly, it's not, you know, it's a couple $2 or $3 a month. I am with Mr. Wade that we don't like raising taxes. I think we all know that the next 12 months we're going to see a little bit of that coming in. But while we're here and you have the ability to get the 8, it might make sense to look at it. I would be just as happy with the 3. I think we at least have to break even. But, you know, I think we really need to strongly consider that 4th option as well.
Councilman Freeman? Councilman Clark?
So, no, thank you, Councilmember Wade and Councilmember John. And I agree with both of you. And, you know, while option 3 does bring us to a 0 balance based on what the budget that Liz prepared recently, you know, option 4 I think should be considered because we do have this road issue, the bridge issue with Barnes Bridge, and that's going to be some unexpected costs. You know, I think we need to be fiscally responsible, and part of us being fiscally responsible is making sure the town is in a good, solid place to move forward. And we do have these issues next year. We are going to be limited to 3.5% growth. Basically, it's going to be locked at 3.5% without going to election. And so that will put us under some strain. So I think we need to make sure we get as much capacity as we can right now, and in order that we are in the best place we can be, and being fiscally responsible, we can prepare for next year and then the future going on. Because I think, yes, in the future, as John said, you know, in the future we probably will start hitting tax rates. Our rate will actually start dropping every year. I think it may go down. And you know, with all of our growth, we actually won't be able to capture a lot of our growth. So in being financially responsible, I think that we need to definitely consider option 4. But I'm definitely in favor of option 3, maybe even option 4.
Thank you, Councilmember Clark. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Finch. I think all the comments that all three of us, you guys have made so far are valid. I can live with option 3 as a zero balance. The town's not in a position where we should actually be making money. We're supposed to be zero balanced. I think that's an easy sell. However, option 4 does put us in a position where we can address the rollbacks for next year and the upcoming years as well. One of the things to consider is how's this, in my opinion, how's this going to stack up in the upcoming months as we start talking about bond election. One of the things that concerns me is what is our tax base going to think when they're thinking if it's going to get a cut in their taxes, and they're not. And yet they're going to turn around and think that we've done something that could impact what they thought they were going to get was the tax breaks. Those whole numbers with the INS and M&O and the rollback and property tax and decrease and increase is really confusing to the person that's tracking this from their home. One of the things that we could take advantage of is knowing that this 101,000, we're gonna have to deal with this bridge issue and maybe a second bridge as well. So maybe we're more at a zero balance at option 4 than we think we are. That's a possibility. The other option that we can take advantage of is the school's rate. We don't know how that's going to impact people, quite honestly. We don't know where that's going to go. But we're going to have to make a bond election, and we're going to look at a tax number there. So I think in my mind, the thing that we're looking at for all of this discussion is where does this number hit us? Does it impact the bond? Are we good? And yet the bottom line is all of this stuff we got to have. So I definitely can live with option 3 is it's our obligation to be zero balanced. I think we'd like to have all this extra cash flow, but that's not what our functionality is. But if we can justify option 4 at zero balance with the bridges, then I think we're zero balance with that number as well. So I think the dilemma we're at is which of these two numbers are we going to take as a zero balance? Option 3 as it is on paper, or option 4 zero balance with the possibility of dealing with the bridge issue that's coming up. And if we can reach zero balance in either one of those, I think our residents will understand it, but they're definitely going to see a number change in their property tax. And Jim, and to all the points that you've made, you've got a long history of the temperament of our residents.
Let me clarify something. These bottom line numbers are not zero-based budgets. They're revenue increases. So we're increasing our surplus in option 4 by $101,000, which means our projected surplus under the new budget, and I don't have that in front of me, would be about $550,000, which would probably be 24 days of surplus over the 120. Option 3 holds us at Liz's proposed, or staff's proposed budget at 18 days. Am I close?
18 plus the 120?
Yeah, you're at
18 plus 120.
You're at 100, excuse me, you're at 138 days.
Right now. So option 4 would add probably 4 more days, maybe 5 more days to the 138. Somebody's got a real number. I don't have the real number. Option 3 keeps us at the 138. I said that just so we weren't looking at zero.
Yeah, I appreciate you
Thanks.
clarifying that. No, absolutely.
It's revenues.
So I think to tie into all of our dilemma is where do we go? And I can live with either. I think I can live with either one. I can vote for either one if we can get to the point to where we're good with either one.
And the couple things that I would like to add in. One, the number that always, when we've been started talking about budgets, and I hate to keep coming back to this, but the police number is an estimate. right? And it's an estimate, and maybe it's overestimated, but there could be $200,000 worth of things that we just didn't quite put in there. So when I look at these numbers as far as where we sit, the police number is an estimate. And that one still, to me, kind of, I hope it's right. And we've had a lot of really good people who knew what they were talking about who did it. So I'm assuming that it's pretty accurate. But man, you miss a little bit here or there, you know. And then the other thing that I would like to bring up, and I actually found my our weekend budget retreat up the street. When we sat down, we were anticipated of having, I think it was 102 days, right, and less the 120, because we had it was 2.3. So everything that we did, we took a good chunk of those reserves, and we actually spent them on things that we needed to improve. You know, raising the salaries for town for council. We did our for staff. Also police. So we did spend a lot of that money already. That additional 102 that we're talking about, or 110, I believe the number is, we still spent a whole lot more money than we brought in this year, right? Because we did take a lot of those reserves and put them somewhere else. So just so we're not, you know, we're kind of looking at the big picture, you know, we still, we still have to worry about the police number. And second off, there was a lot of money that we had already kind of put out for special projects, that if we were to pull 100 of that or so back, I don't think we're going outside of what we're supposed to do, right? Spend the money. We've done a pretty good job of getting a lot of that money out this year, I believe.
Yes, so the money that we took out of reserves for this upcoming budget and the proposed budget is primarily for the duplication to stand up the police department, so you're exactly right. And then in addition, $100,000 to do the pre-work on the fire department issue. So those were the two major things that came out of reserves. The other we did them as one-time expenses, just because we're trying to prepare for next year. So we didn't want a lot of new expenses to roll forward on us. The other thing, I do want to echo your sentiment about the police numbers being estimates. I mean, we still are in the middle of getting an RFQ with Mesquite to even identify what the expenses are going to be to stand up dispatch over there. So, you know, it's not an insult to anybody who was on the committee or who worked as a consultant on that project. It's just there are a lot of unknowns that we're still working on. And then finally, I do want to comment on the bridge. It is not a minor repair that's needed. It is a significant project. I mean, I sent some photos to you all today. If you had a chance to look at them, you'll see that I don't feel this is a minor repair, so it will not be inexpensive to repair this. And I wish I had some estimates, but I tried to weasel them out of Lyle today, and he would not commit because it's significant. Yeah.
All right, well, I too echo those sentiments. I am concerned about the police number. I do think it's a swag. I think we don't know what we don't know to some extent. I'm concerned about the bridge, but I'm also concerned we can't forget about our fire service. I mean, we're increasing residents here. We have not increased staffing on our fire service. I think it's something we're going to have to look at, and I don't think we've looked at it a whole lot. I know that Susan's probably looked at it some, but I think we cannot underestimate the costs that we're going to bear for adding residents, especially as we look at the additional work that's going on. I mean, heck, we closed down 80, and it took all of our services out. When we did that, we had to close down 80, so we had, you know, that's a problem. And so I'm concerned about that as well. I know this looks like on capturing the full rollback rate gives the impression of an increase or a surplus, but I think it's something that if we really address the needs of our town and things that we know are coming, I don't think we're going to see that. I think we're going to still be dipping into our reserves at some point. That's my concern. And so I echo the sentiment that nobody likes to raise taxes, but Jim, remind me, how long's it been since we've raised taxes here? Yeah, long time. Mayor Fobb's term. So I think we have to give serious consideration to making the hard choice. I mean, it's a hard choice for all of us because we're going to have to go out and represent this to our citizens as to what, that we've done this. And so I think it's a hard choice for us, but I think we're elected to make these choices.
I had a couple questions. Well, one question, one comment. These numbers are represented on a $350,000 value. Do we know what that would be at $400,000 value? I know it's not going to be significantly different. I tried to do the math. My math kept coming up way wrong.
400 divided by 350 multiplied by whatever that number is.
Yeah. I'll still come up with two different numbers.
Option 4, I just used the number of 200, about 200 a year.
Yeah, me too, roughly.
Yeah, about $200 a year. But
Right. So, in looking at a recent tax survey that we have available, I think it's important to note that Sunnyvale is ranked 190th in population in Texas, and we're ranked 370th in gross tax rate in Texas. I think we have very low taxes, and if we look at option 4, it moves us to 332nd. So it's not a big jump in where we're going, just ranked with all the other towns and cities. We're still 332nd. Again, using option 4, we'd be 332nd in the gross tax rate ranking, and in population, we're 190th.
Those are correct numbers, and I don't mean to throw water on them, but let's realize that there's a lot of cities, comparable to us even, where their revenue is generated from sales tax and not from property tax. So that skews those numbers a little bit because we don't have the sales tax to comparable cities. I'm thinking of some of those that I've been in recently, Granbury, Bastrop, heavy sales taxes, and not necessarily the same amount. And I don't know what their tax rate is, but those places have tremendous amounts of sales tax, which gives them revenue that we don't currently have, which maybe we're going towards with the addition of QT and some restaurants and so forth.
It seems like, just listening to all of our arguments, that everybody's okay with option 3 at $10 a month. So here's my question, option 4, does $12 a month, $2 a month make any difference to the average home buyer? Or maybe I should say that to the town of Sunnyvale, is $12 any different than $10 a month? Spoken by the man that knows those numbers well.
I think the bigger question for us is the wisdom of raising these rates and making sure that we're being wise with it. And I think we can all sit here and say that based on what we know and what we've seen, there is wisdom in how we're using our revenue. It's not like we're trying to build a surplus or build a pot somewhere. These will actually go for services that are needed for the town that may have neglected over the years. And so we're moving into this new stage. Any other comments, council? Susan, Liz, does that give you some direction?
Yes, and
does
we're going to
give
work
us-
with Dallas County to make sure that we get the debt structured just so. As the numbers change on us, whether it's the certified changing or the ceilings changing, we're going to get with our financial advisor and make sure that we get our debt coverage that's appropriate. And on that option 4, that 0.357041, that cannot go any higher.
Yep.
So the debt rate is the only one where we have any, room to move it at all. So we'll go back and relook at the structure of the debt. We want to make sure we stay below, at or below the rollback rate.
Right. So it sounds like option 3 or 4 are the two that we're
That,
landing
yes,
on.
that's what
So
I'm getting is 3 or 4.
give some options, I guess, the next meeting. We can discuss that.
Yeah, and I did want to comment that we had another person join us, so I just want to make sure we give an opportunity for public comment.
Thank you.
And then just the reminder that we have next week, we do have to file again, so we'll have to make some decisions by next week.
Okay.
Is that correct, Liz?
We have to publish a proposed rate. That does not lock you into that rate until you actually adopt that rate. That's why you have 2 public hearings.
Okay.
But we do have to pull a trigger on a proposed rate. So
Okay.
normally, historically, we've adopted that proposed rate, but I just want to make sure if you see that posted, it's based on the timeline, and when we have to go out and actually make that disclosure. And if it changes between those times, that's fine, because the rate must be adopted by September 9th.
But once you publish a rate, you cannot go any higher than the published rate.
Published rate. So we probably.
Thank you, Leslie.
Okay.
So if you published
Publish
at
four.
option 4 and you came down off of that, you would be okay.
be
But
okay.
if you publish at option 3, you have to stay with you can only come off of option 3.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I have one question, probably Liz can answer it. And my numbers may be wrong, but our expected return was less $30 million than what we expected, is that right? I don't know where I got that number from.
I think you're looking at the certified values. The initial certified value in 722 was 1.336, and then 725 it came out 1.301.
Yes, the difference, the 1,336 was an estimated tax value by Hilltop Security based on a 9% growth. And then the certifieds came in and they were lower than that estimate.
Was that number, was that a majority of that number that was less? Was the majority of that commercial property, or was it residential property?
I would have to go deep into, let me put it this way. When we got our first preliminary estimated value from the Dallas Central Appraisal District, it was 1.4 billion. So you can see that Hilltop's number was a little bit in the middle of that 1.4 that was a preliminary number from the appraisal district. And then when they came back with certified, it was 1.301. So I would have to look in the detail, and I can do that for you and provide it for you and see what the difference is. And they make those comparisons for you almost. They don't tell you specifically what sector it is, but you can go in there and get that information out of there. So you can see how much those values can change.
Liz, can you comment on the tax ceiling difference? This just the growth we've seen?
Yes, we have tax ceilings, and we noticed that that's for people that are 65 or older. And we noticed that those had increased 14% this year, and that's a pretty big number. It doesn't normally increase quite, that's almost twice. And so I don't know if that's people getting educated about the option being out there for them, or if we're all just getting older at the same time. So that was one of the reasons, because you had that increase in tax ceilings. And you have to back that out of your taxable value.
Yeah, that's a high percentage of increase, and maybe something we should capture in this discussion to know that why did our numbers drop so much? And that's part of it's the aging population.
Protests.
In part, not in whole, but in part, I think that leads to the discussion here that's part of the reason our numbers are a little bit different than we expected.
You know, in that number, again, like you say, you have things that will bring that number down. Are things, let me get my notes here. Your tax ceilings, your properties under protest, your ag exemptions, new improvements. They take a little bit of the new construction out because it doesn't trigger until the next year, so they take some of that out. So this number is very fluid, unfortunately. It moves, it continues to move throughout the year. Usually it doesn't move too much to be material. That's why going into it, you try to capture all of those things that you think might have some impact on those values. And that's another reason that we normally budget at a 97% rate. We have very good collections in the town of Sunnyvale, but by using that 90% tax rate, it provides us a little bit of coverage in case something like, you know, a big protest comes up, a Freeport exemption comes up. just those things that happen throughout the year, it helps us cover those.
I guess, not to bog you down in numbers, the reason I ask that is because if you protest your taxes, it's going to change $200 or $300 per resident normally, not the value, but the actual cash value. So I was just curious where the rest of the numbers came from. That 14% is high, I think. So here's a question, if it's not too much to figure out. How much did it change? How much did the 65 and over population change from last year to this year? Did that percentage change quite a bit? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I don't think that changes our decision, but at least it's helped us qualify the data that we're looking at, why the numbers are different than what we thought.
And your protests are $10 million more than they were last year. They were 18 million last year, and they're almost 29 million this year.
And that's a lot. So the question is that protest a higher percentage of commercial property or residential property?
Yeah, I can get the detail for you.
Just a bit of quick research. The tax rate did not change from 1998 to 2009. It stayed the same from 2009 to 2017, when it went up again by less than a penny, and then we lowered it in 2018 because of the rollback. So that's the history of increases from 1998 forward.
So what was it in 17? Went up what?
It went up from 47,962. Then it went to 41,308 in 2017, and then we had to drop it to 41,29 currently.
So we've had an effective increase since 09 of a half penny.
Well, no, since '09, you're up about 3.5 cents. Since '98,
Okay,
98, you're about 3.5 cents up.
And
Liz,
if you want to see that information, if you go out on the website and under the Finance Department, under Transparency, and look at the CAFR, the audit report, the last few pages of that report has like a 10-year history of tax rates, taxable values, some of those things. I'm not sure it goes back quite as far as Ms.
I didn't use that resource, so I used something else.
Councilmember Wade. But if you want to see that, it's in the 17-18 CAFR or audit, and it is out on the website.
This is more of just a concern, not necessarily for this year, but next year. Remember 2 or 3 years ago, if you were trying to buy a house in Sunnyvale, you had like 24, 48 hours to get your house, and then the prices kept on going up and up and up. We've started to see lots of houses staying on the market longer, leading me to believe that maybe prices over the next tax year might come down slightly. How would that affect us with, we're going to have the 3.5% cap, but we're bringing a lot of new houses on board. That theoretically should not have a major, even if it does, prices do go down 3 to 5%, we still should hit the 3.5% next year, correct? You would assume so, with the new constructions coming on board?
Well, my perception of that is it doesn't have anything to do with your values. You can only have 3.5% additional revenues.
Yes, that's correct. And I think we figured out at one point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but I think we figured out that the lineage, and we have, I think, something on lineage, but just as an example, that alone would reach the 3.5%. And then you add QT, because those will come on next year, those improvements, because they're new, so they don't come on this year. So those alone, I think QT is like half of our 3.5%. So then don't even count the 7 houses under construction on my street alone. So, I mean, we're going to, well exceed that, and I don't think a little market correction is probably going to impact that significantly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Liz, is the $500,000 cap for small cities still available to us? So maybe 3.5 or 500,000, so we have a little bit of leeway there. But you're right, the commercial is going to blow us out anyway. But new construction is also an exemption from the 3.5, I believe, for 1 year. Some of the, I wonder if some of the delay or the increased number of days on the market has to do with some of these houses are spec houses, and they're not selling the spec houses I don't know how Spec House gets into the market data, but I know there's quite a few apparent spec houses up in Homestead. And maybe elsewhere.
All right, council, any other comments? If not, I will open this up for public comments. So if anybody would like to come forward and speak in relation to our first agenda item, please come forward now. All right, so no one has come forward to speak, so I'll close the public comments. Any other comments, council, on this agenda item? Staff, you have what you need. Susan, Liz, you have what you need from us? Very good. Okay, we'll move on to the second. Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you, Liz and Susan, and the rest of the team for continuing to put all this together. I know this is a big headache, and so thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilmember Clark. Okay, we'll move on to the second agenda item in relation to act and consider upon ordinance 19-19. Susan?
Yes, sir. This is really just a very minor tweak. You considered this and voted on it and passed this ordinance at our last meeting, but in discussions with the Texas Comptroller's Office, our attorney and the Texas Comptroller's Office had just a little difference in language, and we wanted to just be very, very sure of the language before we move forward. So accordingly, we did go ahead and tweak the language, so I'm bringing it back before you just to validate the language that will be on the ballot. So if you'd like, Mayor Pro Tem Finch, I can read the caption.
Be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
An ordinance of the Town of Sunnyvale, Dallas County, Texas, repealing Ordinance 19-18, ordering a special election at the next uniform municipal election date on the 5th day of November 2019 to consider termination of the Sunnyvale 4A Development Corporation Type A and the associated sales tax, and the adoption of a local sales tax and use tax in the Town of Sunnyvale at a rate of 1 1/2%, resulting in no net change in the total sales tax rate, designating the place at which said election is to be held, making provisions for the conduct of the election and other provisions incident and relating to the purpose of this ordinance, providing a severability clause, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. All right, council, any comments, questions relating to this agenda item?
I have one question for you. With regard to the no net change, can that be highlighted or underlined on the ballot, or are we restricted from that?
Okay, I don't know firsthand, but Leslie is saying she doesn't think that we can. And those were actually words that we worked really closely with the comptroller to be able to add, because we thought it was really important for voters to understand that it was transparent in terms of the amount that they would be paying. It's just a matter of where the funds go once they're paid.
Thank you. If we can underline it, I don't know, that might be a highlight to the people that have to read a whole bunch of words that don't really know. I'm just
If you go to the,
Yeah, it's on the next page of the ordinance,
The actual ballot language there.
but the no net changes in that language, yeah.
That's a little easier to understand.
I don't know why I got sidetracked there.
it's confusing.
But still, if possible, it may be helpful. If we can put in bold or underline or highlight.
I'll echo kind of our conversation from last time. This is going to be one of those things that the town needs to be educated on. I mean, the language is better. I really do like the language better this time, and it doesn't make it seem like we're adding that new tax. I think this one's much clearer. But there are going to be people who read that and say that we're adding a 1.5% tax, and they just need to understand through education that, hey, this is us replacing a tax, removing this tax, replacing that. So any education that we can do to help educate the town, that would be very beneficial, I believe.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Any other comments, council?
And this is the only thing that we're gonna have on the ballot in November, is that correct?
It's the only thing the town will have.
The town will have, but the school will have something.
I don't believe that they voted on that yet.
I'm just thinking about how much it's gonna cost us to have this one item on a ballot.
I believe they are strongly considering placing an item on the ballot as well. All right, council, any other comments?
They're not listed. I don't know how long they have to decide, but they are not listed on the participating entities. There was only 7 of us listed.
It's for the November?
I think their cutoff date's different than ours.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know about that with Dallas County. I don't think so. They have to let Dallas County know like we do.
What was the cutoff?
I'd have to go look, I'd have to look it up and email y'all tomorrow, but
They still have some
Yeah.
time. Okay,
yeah, they still have time to order the
okay,
election.
you just hadn't seen it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, exactly. Okay, any other questions? We do. So I will open this up for public comment. If anybody would like to come forward and make a comment on the second agenda item, please come forward now. Okay, seeing no public comment. Council, any other comments or questions? If not, I will call for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept to adopt the language for, as read by Susan.
All right, motion made by Alan. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Councilman Freeman. Council, any other discussions? Comments? All right. Have a vote. Indicate. All in favor? Yes, all right. Motion passes unanimously. Any opposed, just in case? Nobody opposed. All right, motion passes. All right. Okay, this is all the agenda items we have, unless council has any other comments or questions for staff. All right, very good. Okay, we'll have, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Actually,
Go ahead, Councilman Freeman.
given what had gone on this week with the cutting down of trees, I really think we might want to add something about the UDO on a future council meeting. Maybe not the next one, maybe after we get through the budgets and everything's done, but just something to kind of look at going forward. Just to kind of dig back in to see if everything is in line with where it needs to be, or if there's some changes that might need to be made going forward.
So are you requesting that staff review the tree ordinance, or are you asking for a summary of the tree ordinance?
We had that sent out this week, if I'm thinking, right? That did go out. Just maybe a chance for a public forum for people to come in and voice their ideas, because again, it was it was one of those topics that we heard a lot from our citizens from all over, and it might be good for kind of get some public opinion on that particular item.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, how about a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourn?
All right,
Second.
all right. Motion to adjourn by Councilman Clark, second by Allen. All in favor? We are adjourned.